As a racist cop patrols the park, he spots Mike Tyson sitting on a park bench, feeding pigeons and interacting with people. He assumes he's just another ordinary black man, and his biases immediately cloud his judgment. He approaches Mike and asks him to leave, saying he doesn't belong here. When Mike Tyson refuses, the cop strikes him with his baton, not knowing he just messed with the wrong person and was about to get the lesson of his life. Subscribe and like this video to see how the story unfolds. The scene unfolds on a breathtaking day in City View Park, where the sun shines brightly on a picturesque landscape of green grass and blue skies. Families enjoy their day, children frolic with youthful energy, and joggers grace the trails with rhythmic strides. Amidst the happy scenes of park life, Mike Tyson, the legendary boxer, sits quietly on a bench. Wearing a hoodie and jeans, he radiates an air of calm as he offers a handful of birdseed to a gathering of pigeons. His expression softens as a young boy, drawn to the avian spectacle, sprints towards the bench. The young boy, his face aglow with excitement, inches closer to the bench, his feet scarcely touching the ground as he jumps in place with anticipation. His question bursts forth in a breathless torrent of youthful energy, as if he scarcely believes what his eyes are telling him. Are you Mike Tyson? Tyson, still smiling, turns to look at the boy. His eyes gleam with a warmth that belies his boxing reputation. "That's right, kid," he responds, his voice deep and rich. Mike Tyson's shoulders shake with a chuckle as he recognizes the young fan's unbridled enthusiasm. "Want an autograph?" he asks, the hint of a twinkle in his eyes. The boy nods vigorously, his face aglow with a mix of disbelief and delight. Tyson takes a notepad from the boy, his fingers nimbly wielding a pen. A few quick strokes, and his signature adorns the paper like a work of art. As the boy beams with pride, his mother calls him back, her gratitude to Tyson clear in her tone. Officer Daniels, his patrol a daily ritual of scowling and intimidation, strides through the park with a gait that demands respect, or at the very least, fear. His close-cropped hair and mirrored sunglasses conceal his piercing eyes, which survey the area with steely scrutiny. As he rounds a corner, Officer Daniels' gaze falls upon the famous boxer feeding pigeons, the group of birds forming a halo of tranquility around Tyson. Daniels' lips curl in a sneer, his gaze narrowing to a calculating slit. "Just great," he mutters to himself, his expression hardening with each step. As Officer Daniels approaches, his words turn bitter and judgmental. "Another one loitering around here," he sneers to himself, his gaze accusing. "Probably up to no good, wouldn't be surprised if he starts causing trouble." His lips curl into a smirk as he contemplates the satisfaction of running Mike Tyson off, the power of his badge lending him an inflated sense of authority. Officer Daniels, a self-styled sentinel of the park, draws near Mike Tyson, his body language radiating a palpable air of intimidation. He stands straight, his shoulders squared, and his chin jutting out like a knife's edge. "Hey!" Daniels barks, his tone as sharp as a lash. "You can't be sitting here all day, move along." The pigeons, startled by Daniel's aggressive approach, scatter in a flurry of feathers and coos. Mike Tyson, however, remains unperturbed, his expression unreadable. With a hint of amusement coloring his voice, Mike Tyson replies to Officer Daniels, his tone casual but firm. "I'm just feeding the pigeons, man. Is that a crime?" His calm demeanor stands in stark contrast to the cop's confrontational approach, the interaction taking on the air of a verbal chess match. Daniel's eyes narrow at Mike's response, his hands finding the comfort of his holster, as if readying for battle. "Maybe not," he concedes, his voice laced with thinly veiled contempt, "but it ain't right either." Officer Daniels' irritation boils over at Mike Tyson's nonchalance, his disdain palpable as he scoffs in response. "Don't get smart with me," he spits, his words sharp as broken glass. "I said move along." The cop's aggression rises like a storm tide, his hand inching closer to his holster, the implied threat crystal clear. Mike, unflinching, meets the cop's gaze with a steely stare, his body language as unyielding as granite. "I'm not going anywhere," he replies, his words slow and deliberate. The standoff between Mike Tyson and Officer Daniels seems to have drawn an audience, as a small crowd begins to gather, their whispers and mutterings adding to the tense atmosphere. In contrast to the cop's seething anger, Mike Tyson remains composed, seated on the bench, as if he were merely engaging in a casual conversation. His voice, measured and unflappable, reflects an air of defiance. "I'm not bothering anyone," he reiterates calmly. "I think you've got the wrong idea about me. I'm just enjoying the park like everyone else." Daniels, his simmering frustration morphing into an inferno of rage, leans forward, his face mere inches away from Mike Tyson's. The veins on his neck pulse as he stares Mike down, his eyes burning with a ferocity that could melt steel. "I don't care who you think you are," he growls, his voice a low rumble of hostility. "Get up, now!" he roars, his breath hot and heavy against Mike's face. The crowd inhales sharply at the sight, fear and awe suffusing their collective reaction. Daniel's patience snaps like a brittle twig, his baton a fury-fueled extension of his arm as he lashes out. The sound of the impact reverberates through the crowd like a thunderclap, the crack of the baton against Mike Tyson's shoulder sending shockwaves of horror and disbelief throughout the park. Mike, taken aback by the sudden onslaught, lets out a low grunt of pain, his body tensing as if bracing for the next blow. The crowd's reaction is instant and visceral, a chorus of gasps and cries of protest erupting around the scene. Like a dormant volcano awakening, Mike Tyson rises from his seated position, his height and imposing figure dwarfing Officer Daniels' stature. His movements are slow, deliberate, each deliberate motion radiating a simmering intensity. Despite the throbbing pain in his shoulder, Mike's face remains unreadable. His eyes a deep, dark pool of still water, he fixes his gaze on Daniels, the silence between them rife with an unspoken challenge. The crowd's murmurings quieten, all eyes trained on the epic showdown unfolding before them. Mike Tyson, his voice a deliberate whisper that carries the weight of mountains, speaks to Officer Daniels. "You didn't have to do that," he utters, his words carrying an undercurrent of repressed rage. Daniels, momentarily surprised by Mike's restraint, stumbles over his words. "You should have just listened," he replies, the arrogance in his tone undercut by a hint of fear. The tension in the air grows thicker by the second, the crowd now hushed as they anticipate what comes next. Daniels, his smirk a mask to hide his fraying nerves, takes a step closer to Mike Tyson, his hand still clutching the baton. "What are you going to do about it?" he taunts, his voice now laced with bravado and thinly veiled panic. His eyes dart to the baton, weighing his options, but Mike Tyson's towering presence seems to sap his courage. Mike, unperturbed by Daniels' threat, stands his ground, his posture unflinching. Mike Tyson, moving with the slow, deliberate pace of a stalking tiger, draws even closer to Officer Daniels, his presence an immovable wall of unyielding authority. "I could show you," he growls, his words carrying the weight of an unspoken promise. "But first, you're going to apologize to these people for what you just did." The crowd, enthralled by Mike's steely resolve, shifts closer, their eyes widening as they witness the unfolding drama. Daniels, his smug facade cracking under the pressure, takes a hesitant step backward. "Officer Daniels," his laughter a brittle attempt to regain the upper hand, steadies himself, his defiance momentarily overshadowing his fear. "Apologize?" he spits, his voice dripping with mockery. "To you?" He shakes his head. "Not a chance, Tyson, not a chance in hell." The crowd, sensing the powder keg at its brink, watches with bated breath, each word, each gesture, a potential spark to set the scene aflame. Mike Tyson, his patience stretched to its limits, clenches his jaw, a primal rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. Daniels, emboldened by his own brazen words, lunges forward, his baton a blurring streak of violence. But Mike Tyson, his reflexes honed to razor-sharp precision, intercepts the blow, his hand closing around the baton like an iron vice. The crowd, now a chorus of awe and shock, watches as he effortlessly wrenches the weapon from Daniels' grasp, the crowd erupting in a cacophony of cheers and gasps. Daniels, his eyes wide with disbelief, stumbles backward, his face reddening as he realizes the gravity of his mistake. Mike Tyson, his voice a deadly whisper, stares down Officer Daniels, his face an unforgiving mask of retribution. "You messed with the wrong guy today," he growls, and the threat in his words as palpable as the anger in his eyes. "You messed with the wrong guy in the wrong city, on the wrong day, and now you're going to pay the price." Daniels, his bravado evaporating like mist in the morning sun, takes another step back, his feet betraying his fear despite his attempts to hide it. Officer Daniels, his desperation palpable, lashes out with a wild, untrained punch. But Mike Tyson, his reflexes honed by years in the ring, dodges the blow with the fluidity of a shark in water. He counters with a series of precise, expertly executed strikes, each one landing with devastating accuracy. Daniels, caught off guard and overpowered, staggers backward. his defenses crumbling under Mike's relentless barrage. Like a drowning man grasping for salvation, Daniels flails, his arms waving wildly, but it's to no avail. As Mike Tyson's dazzling display of martial prowess brings Daniels to his knees, the crowd, energized by the spectacle, erupts in ecstatic cheers, a symphony of chants and shouts that reverberate throughout the park. In a scene reminiscent of a medieval jousting match, the onlookers whip out their phones, their cameras capturing the momentous clash like a swarm of flies descending upon a banquet. The Rock, now simply Dwayne, emerges from the crowd, clapping alongside the other spectators, his eyes alight with admiration, fixate on Mike, a silent acknowledgement of the boxer's skill. Mike Tyson, a portrait of grace under pressure, allows Daniels to stagger back to his feet. Despite his victory, his face remains impassive, his eyes a window into the depths of his self. "I could have hurt you," he admits, his tone measured and calm, "but that's not who I am. I'm not like you." The crowd, hushed by the display of restraint, holds its breath, captivated by Mike's words. Officer Daniels, his bravado reduced to tatters, stumbles under the weight of Mike Tyson's words, the reality of his defeat finally dawning upon him. His eyes dart around the crowd, seeking an escape but finding only the unblinking eyes of the spectators. He sees, in the faces of the people he had sworn to protect, the realization that his actions have irrevocably tarnished his badge of authority. His expression twists into one of shame, his shoulders sagging like a broken puppet. Mike Tyson, his voice like a hammer striking the anvil of Daniel's pride, points towards the surrounding crowd. "These people," he declares, his words echoing with the weight of justice, "saw what you did. They saw you, a representative of the law, assault an unarmed citizen, and they saw me defend her." The crowd, galvanized by Mike's words, cheers in agreement, their voices a chorus of condemnation. Daniels, his face now flushed with humiliation, hangs his head in defeat. The crowd parts like a wave, making way for the burly form of a senior officer, his furious expression signaling his displeasure long before he utters a word. "Daniels!" the officer bellows, his voice booming over the crowd's chatter. "What's going on here?" he demands, his eyes narrowing into accusing slits as they rake over the scene. Daniels, his shoulders hunched with shame, opens his mouth to speak, but no words emerge, his tongue paralyzed by fear. The crowd, emboldened by Mike Tyson's heroism, surges forward, their voices a chorus of righteous indignation. "He attacked her," one person cries. "He started it," another echoes. The senior officer, his face growing darker with each passing moment, listens with a steely resolve, his ears a conduit for the outrage of the people he has sworn to protect. Daniels, now fully aware of the precariousness of his situation, swallows hard, his eyes darting between Mike, the senior officer, and the crowd, his cowardice exposed for all to see. The senior officer, his eyes falling upon the familiar features of Mike Tyson, draws himself up to his full height. His face, while still stern, softens into a look of genuine regret. "Mr. Tyson," he says, his voice a marked contrast to Daniel's earlier hostility, "I am so sorry about this. I assure you that this will be dealt with swiftly and justly." The crowd, relieved to see their hero treated with the respect he deserves, offers a murmur of approval, their words a quiet wave of encouragement. Mike Tyson, his stoic facade returning, offers the senior officer a curt nod of acknowledgement. His voice, regaining its previous evenness, carries a hint of resolve. "You're right," he agrees, his words striking at the heart of Daniel's misconduct. "People like him don't deserve to wear the badge. They give the entire force a bad name." The crowd, buoyed by Mike's condemnation, responds with another ripple of agreement. Daniels, standing like a statue, can do nothing but stare at the ground, his humiliation complete. Daniels, his defeat palpable, opens his mouth to protest, but the senior officer silences him with a harsh glare. His voice, thick with contempt, slices through the air with the finality of a guillotine. "You're done, Daniels," he declares, each word a hammer blow to Daniels' career. "Badge and gun, now!" The onlookers, justice in their eyes, watch with a grim satisfaction as Daniels reluctantly removes his badge and gun, his hands trembling with shame and frustration. As Daniels slinks away, escorted by the senior officer like a disgraced gladiator exiting the arena, the crowd erupts into a cacophony of cheers and applause, the noise like a tsunami crashing over Mike Tyson's humble figure. Amidst the cheers, a young boy, emboldened by Mike's bravery, edges closer to the boxer, his face beaming with admiration. "You're really a hero, Mr. Tyson," he says, his voice a mixture of awe and gratitude. Mike Tyson, his smile warm and genuine, lowers himself to the young boy's level, their eyes meeting in a moment of profound connection. The real heroes, he says, his voice imbued with the wisdom of experience, are the ones who stand up for what's right. It doesn't matter how big or small you are or what people think of you, always remember that. The boy, his face radiant with awe and pride, nods vigorously, his eyes shining with newfound resolve. As the onlookers drift away, there's stories of Mike Tyson's heroism ready to spread throughout the city like wildfire. The boxer returns to his bench, taking a moment to bask in the serenity of the cityscape. The pigeons, like old friends, flock back to Mike's side, their coos and fluttering wings a gentle symphony of companionship. Mike, leaning back on the bench, surveys the park with a quiet sense of satisfaction. As the camera pulls away, revealing the tranquility of the park in stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded mere moments ago, a narrator's voice gently draws the scene to a close. On this day, in City View Park, a single moment altered the course of many lives. For Mike Tyson, it was a reminder of the power of standing up for what's right. For the boy, it was a lesson in courage. And for Miss Eleanor, it was a demonstration of compassion. In the end, we all need heroes, and sometimes they can be found in the unlikeliest of places.